Oklahoma in the 1980s, where the neon lights of nightclubs were not only places of entertainment, but also stages for unfinished dreams. It was where fate led the way for Toby Keith, a young man who had just stepped out of high school with a heart full of passion to meet Tricia Lucus. Amid the lively atmosphere and the echoing sound of country music, their eyes met. Tricia, then 19 years old and busy working as a secretary at an oil company, was immediately drawn to the confident yet slightly rebellious charm of the bold young man. It was not a superficial kind of love at first sight, but the beginning of a deep and lasting bond. Tricia saw in Toby a burning ambition that went far beyond the limits of small-town life. Throughout 3 years of dating, despite the many changes and uncertainties of the outside world, they remained steadfast in choosing each other as their anchor. In 1984, in the presence of family and friends, they officially entered marriage, marking the beginning of a journey that would last 39 years, a period long enough to turn early emotions into a bond as inseparable as flesh and blood. Their married life did not begin on a red carpet or under dazzling fame, but was built from simplicity and years of hard struggle to make a living. Yet even when life began to face the practical pressures of adulthood, that love never once wavered. They held hands through days when even a loaf of bread or an electricity bill became a difficult equation to solve. Perhaps it was precisely the understanding formed in those early days that created a solid foundation for their family. They were not only husband and wife, but also each other's most loyal partners, always looking in the same direction when facing early storms in life. And then, as the turbulence of the world began to strike, Tricia's steadfastness once again became a saving strength, helping Toby stand firm as he stepped into the next challenging chapter of his life. Before the world knew the name Toby Keith on prestigious music charts, he was simply a diligent worker on the oil rigs of Oklahoma. Under the harsh sun of Midwest summer afternoons, Toby worked tirelessly, earning around $50,000 USD per year, a figure just enough to carry the responsibility of being the breadwinner. Yet deep within his heart, that was not the life he truly belonged to. Whenever the drilling machines stopped, music would rise within him like an undeniable calling. He began traveling between bars, sweating on the rigs while pouring his heart into the band Easy Money. Life at that time was a continuous struggle. There were weeks when his income from music was only around $230 to $250 USD, not enough to cover the long and difficult touring journeys in old trucks. Every night, on endless highways, Toby faced the doubts of reality. The oil industry began to decline, the family's finances became unstable, and pressure weighed heavily on the young man's shoulders. Those around him, friends and colleagues, urged him to abandon his unrealistic dream and take a stable office job, something that could ensure a safer future for Tricia and their children. But in that small house filled with worries, Tricia Lucus was always present like a steadfast anchor. She never used harsh realism to extinguish the fire in her husband's eyes. Instead of complaining about overdue bills or simple meals, she chose to believe in something that even Toby sometimes doubted himself. Tricia was the only one who saw the light of a great star hidden behind oil-stained work clothes. Her support was not loud in words, but silent in the way she managed everything, allowing him to devote himself fully to his guitar and unfinished songs. Tricia's love at this point had gone far beyond ordinary romance. It had become a form of faith. When the outside world turned its back, she remained there, unwavering like a lighthouse in the dark sea, waiting for his ship to reach shore. It was her absolute trust and compassion that became the lifeblood nourishing Toby's ambition, helping him avoid collapse in the face of repeated setbacks. It was a period that tested human resilience, and from the depths of those hardships, a steely determination was forged, preparing for the breakthrough that would take Toby from lonely oil fields into the bright light of the international music scene. Patience eventually reached its limit. For Toby, music was not just a passion, but a life-or-death gamble. He set himself a strict milestone. If by the age of 30 he had not achieved success, he would put away the microphone, store the guitar, and permanently abandon his dream to become a practical husband and father. The pressure of turning 30 began to weigh on every note, turning each performance into a battlefield between the desire for recognition and responsibility to his family. Nashville, the sacred ground of country music, was never an easy place for those starting with nothing. Those years were a long series of doors being shut in his face. Toby went from one record label to another, presenting hopeful demo tapes, only to receive cold rejections from producers. At times, his confidence seemed to have completely run dry, and the dream of becoming a professional artist felt further away than ever. But fate sometimes chooses the strangest paths to smile upon those who never give up. The turning point came from an unexpected situation. One of Toby's demo tapes accidentally ended up in the hands of a flight attendant. That woman, like an invisible link, passed it on to the right person, Harold Shedd, a talented music producer. It was the moment the recording played that awakened Toby's powerful musical potential, opening the door to his first recording contract. When the sounds of Should Have Been a Cowboy were released in 1993, it was not just a hit song, but a thunderclap that erased all doubts of the past. In an instant, from an unknown oil worker, Toby Keith rose to become a global icon of country music. The song captured the hearts of millions, taking him from dim bars to packed stadiums. Yet even in his most radiant moments of glory, Toby always remembered the woman who had stood by him through the hardest years. Success did not change his essence as an artist. Instead, it proved that with a solid foundation behind you, even the most impossible dreams can become reality. His artistic career flourished brilliantly, but for Toby, all that fame only mattered when he could return to his small home, where his life was truly shaped and anchored. When the stage lights faded and the cheers of the crowd gradually quieted, Toby Keith did not choose to immerse himself in lavish parties or the glamorous lifestyle of the elite. For him, the greatest treasure was not the platinum records on the wall, but the small house where Tricia was always waiting. It was where he could shed the shell of a tough country star and return to being a family man, a devoted husband and father who found true peace in the simplest things. Toby's love for Tricia was also proven through the way he embraced and cherished everything that belonged to her as if it were his own flesh and blood. When they came together, Toby did not hesitate to adopt Shelley, Tricia's daughter from a previous relationship, raising her with the same wholehearted love as if she were his biological child. Later, they built their family further with the arrival of Crystal and Stellan. In Toby's world, his children were always the absolute priority. He taught them self-respect, hard work, and how to keep their feet firmly on the ground, even as the family's life was completely transformed by his fame. His children, raised in that nurturing environment, gradually developed their own identities. Crystal chose to continue her father's musical legacy, carrying country melodies further into the world, while Stellan found his own path in business, becoming a determined entrepreneur. In that household, Toby never forced his children to live in the shadow of their famous father. He was simply a guide, someone always present at important milestones, someone who prioritized quiet family evenings over any lucrative performance contract. This bond created a strong spiritual fortress for the artist. In an industry filled with instability and glamour, family became for Toby like a separate island, where he could take off his cowboy hat and return to being an ordinary father. It was the quietness and unconditional love from Tricia and the children that became the energy sustaining his spirit, helping him preserve his identity over decades at the top of fame. And from that solid family foundation, Toby began to expand his vision, stepping into the business world to prove that beyond music, he could also create meaningful value in other areas of life. Toby Keith was never the kind of artist who only stood behind a microphone. He possessed the sharp vision of a businessman, someone who deeply understood the value of labor and self-reliance. Once his fame was firmly established, he began turning other visions into reality, building an empire ranging from the restaurant chain I Love This Bar and Grill to his signature mezcal brand. People often called him the $500 million man. But behind that enormous figure was the instinct of a former oil rig worker, always wanting to build his own foundation rather than depend on anyone else. In the often controversial world of politics, Toby chose an unusually independent path. Although frequently labelled by the media as conservative, he never allowed himself to be confined by any stereotype. For Toby, music had no political boundaries. He was willing to perform out of respect for the office of the president, rather than for any personal political agenda. He believed in freedom of thought and the right to hold one's own views, even when it made him the target of loud criticism. However, the life of a major artist also comes with moments that force one to confront the fragility of human existence. A true turning point in Toby's mindset came from profound grief. Witnessing the death of a close friend's child from a devastating cancer. In that moment, seeing life fade from a young child's eyes, all media debates and stage glory suddenly felt meaningless. He realized that life is too short to be spent on hatred. That event completely changed the way Toby viewed himself and his role in society. He gradually sought reconciliation, avoided unnecessary conflicts, and focused more on giving and sharing. From a misunderstood artist, he transformed into a calm man, oriented toward peace. It was the stage where he understood that the greatest strength of a person does not lie in how many arguments they win, but in what they leave behind in the hearts of those around them. This painful reflection also prepared Toby mentally, so that when real adversity eventually came knocking at his own door, he was able to face it with a calm and steady spirit. In 2021, darkness began to fall over Toby Keith's sunlit life with a devastating diagnosis: stomach cancer. For a man who had spent his entire life overcoming financial hardship and harsh criticism, this was the most formidable opponent he had ever faced. Gone were the bright stage lights and major business ventures. Toby had to step back and confront a body gradually weakening. Yet in the quiet space of his hospital room, he found another source of strength, a deep faith that helped him accept reality with remarkable serenity. For more than 2 years of battling illness, Toby did not choose complaint or avoidance. He faced it with the resilience of a soldier, but also with the humility of someone who had experienced both glory and suffering. Faith became his spiritual medicine, helping him find peace amid pain and appreciate every remaining breath. It was not surrender, but a powerful form of acceptance, to live each remaining moment fully. And throughout that difficult journey, Tricia Lucus was always there. She was not a distant observer, but the embodiment of unwavering companionship. No longer the young secretary she once was, Tricia had become a wife with eyes full of empathy, quietly caring for and strengthening her husband. The image of her standing beside him at the People's Choice Country Awards in September 2023 moved millions of hearts. Even knowing Toby's health was declining, she stood there with pride and dignity, a final testament to a love that nothing could break. In that moment, the world seemed to fall silent. The audience did not only see a country music legend struggling to stand on stage, but also a living testament to marital devotion. Tricia was not just a life partner. She was the keeper of his legacy, the one who walked with him to the very end of the road. As applause filled the air, people were not only applauding Toby's talent, but also the steadfast loyalty Tricia had shown him for nearly 4 decades. It was the prelude to the farewell of a legend, a man who had lived a full life and was now preparing to step into eternity with the peace of someone with no regrets left. On February 5th, 2024, sad news spread across headlines, leaving a painful silence in the hearts of country music fans. Toby Keith had passed away at the age of 62. The world lost a talented artist, a symbol of resilience, and a man who lived fully in pursuit of his own dreams. But for Tricia, it was not only the loss of a star, it was the departure of a soulmate, someone with whom she had written a love story spanning nearly 4 decades through every high and low of life. Though his body has turned to dust, Toby's legacy remains vividly alive in every pulse of life. He left behind a vast musical catalogue, but perhaps his most meaningful legacy is the charitable foundation bearing his name and OK Kids Chorale, a place that has supported and comforted countless families and children affected by devastating cancer. These quiet acts of charity are proof of a compassionate heart, a man who transformed his own suffering into inspiration to heal the lives of others. The story of Toby and Tricia is not merely a biography of success, but a profound lesson on the value of perseverance. They prove that true love is not found in glamorous red carpet moments, but is built in hardship, silent understanding, and absolute loyalty in the face of life and death. Tricia, in the quiet after her husband's passing, remains the image of a strong woman who lived a complete life with the man she loved most. Today, his songs still echo along highways, in familiar bars, and in the hearts of fans. Toby Keith's life is like a country melody, full of soaring highs of glory and deep, quiet lows of farewell. But in the end, that melody closed on a long, resonant note, reminding us that no matter how bright fame may shine, the only things that truly remain are love and the kindness we leave behind in this world. Throughout his career, which song by Toby Keith is the one most closely tied to your memories? Share it with us in the comments below, and don't forget to turn on notifications to follow upcoming documentary stories.